Right now, your mind may be reaching for a heavy, invisible checklist, even as you lie down to rest. Perhaps your jaw is slightly clenched, or your breath feels shallow, as if you are trying to keep a dozen fragile plates spinning in the air so that nothing breaks. It is a strange, exhausting state, wanting to drift into the quiet dark, but feeling that if you truly let go, the world might lose its balance. You might notice that your thoughts are circling, not because they have anywhere to go, but because they believe that if they stop moving, you will be caught unprepared by tomorrow. This is the weight you have been carrying, a burden of vigilance that feels like safety, but acts like a cage. The room around you is cooling, and the shadows have softened against the walls, creating a space that asks for nothing. Imagine the air as a gentle, cool weight that settles over your tired skin, not to trap you, but to hold you. There is no need for you to be anything other than exactly as you are in this moment. You are not broken, and the restlessness you feel is not a failure of your character. It is simply an old, tired habit of the heart that believes it must carry every stone on the path to make the walking safer. Tonight, we will not force your mind to be silent. We will not try to banish your thoughts. Instead, we are going to look at the way you hold those stones, and perhaps for the first time in a long time, we will explore what it feels like to set the bag down on the earth. You have been told, or perhaps you have told yourself, that if you stop managing the details of your life, everything will drift into ruin. But there is a different truth to consider. The mind does not become peaceful because you manage to fix the world. It becomes peaceful when you stop treating every thought as a command you are forced to obey. This is the paradox you have been living. You believe your grip on the future is what keeps you steady, yet that very grip is what prevents you from feeling the ground beneath your feet. You are safe enough to soften. You do not have to solve your whole life tonight. The path you are walking is already there, and it does not require you to carry the weight of the mountain to prove that you are moving forward. Take a slow breath in, and as you let it out, imagine that you are releasing the need to hold the weight of your own shoulders. Maybe you can feel where the tension has been hiding, deep in the space between your ribs or the back of your neck. You do not need to push it away. Just acknowledge that it is there, like a heavy, river-smoothed stone you have been clutching in your palm for miles. It is a smooth stone, cool and solid, and you have become so accustomed to the weight that you have forgotten it. It is an object you chose to pick up. For tonight, we can simply sit with it. We do not have to throw it away. We do not have to analyze why you picked it up. We only need to notice that your hand is aching from the pressure. You have spent so much energy trying to be the architect of your own peace, believing that if you could just think the right thought or plan the next step perfectly, the heavy feeling would vanish. But the exhaustion you feel is the sound of your own resistance. It is the sound of a heart trying to control the weather rather than learning to sit in the shelter. If it feels right, let your eyes close and let the darkness in the room meet the darkness behind. You are not lost. You are just tired from a long uphill climb, and you have arrived at a place where the road levels off, where you are invited to rest your pack on the ground and feel the sudden, quiet lightness of your own arms. Think of the energy you use to monitor your life. It is like a bird that never lands, perpetually wings beating, watching for the next threat, the next duty, the next potential mistake. If that bird could land, if it could just tuck its wings in and feel the branch beneath its feet, it would realize that the sky remains. The sky, whether it is flying or resting. You are that bird, and the branch is the present moment. You do not need to earn your rest. You do not need to demonstrate that you have handled every concern before you are allowed to close your eyes. The world will continue to spin without your active intervention for these next few hours. Perhaps you feel that if you let go of your worry, you are abandoning your responsibilities. But consider that carrying the weight is not the same as doing the work. You can be present for your life without being the one who dictates every outcome. When you grip your future so tightly, you are only bruising the present. Tonight, we will look at this differently. We will walk toward a quiet mountain tea hut where the air is thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, and we will watch a traveler who, like you, arrived with a heavy burden he believed was essential for his survival. As we listen to his story, see if you can hear a rhythm that mirrors your own. Let the story carry the weight for you, so your own thoughts can finally begin to drift. You are safe here, you are understood, and for this time, you have nothing at all to do. High in the mountains where the air tastes of mist and cold stone, there once lived a traveler who was known for the size of his burden. He did not carry food or gold or maps of the lands he intended to visit. Instead, he carried a large sealed box made of heavy, rusted iron. The metal was dark and pitted with age, and it was fastened shut, with a lock so complex that no key in the village below could turn it. He held this box with both arms, even when he slept, and he walked with a hunched posture that had become as much a part of him as his own shadow. Everyone who saw him pass on the mountain trails would wonder what treasure he kept inside. They would ask him if he was carrying gold, or perhaps secret maps to a kingdom of peace, or maybe the remedies for his own past mistakes. He never answered them directly. He would only tighten his grip on the cold, unforgiving edges of the iron and press onward, his breath coming in sharp, shallow bursts that rattled in his chest. He believed that inside the box lay the exact answers to every uncertainty he would ever face. He believed that if he could just find the right time and the right place to open it, he would finally be prepared for everything. He told himself that the pain of carrying it was a small price to pay for the security of having the solution close at hand. He thought he was being wise, being diligent, and being the only one in the world who was truly planning for the unknown. After years of climbing, he found himself exhausted on a high ridge where the trees were sparse and the wind hummed a low, mournful tune against the jagged rocks. Near the edge of a sheer cliff, he spotted a small wooden hut with a roof thatched with dry mountain grass. A thin thread of blue smoke curled upward from a stone chimney, dancing in the quiet air, driven by a bone-deep fatigue that made his very joints ache. He stumbled toward the entrance. Sitting outside on a simple wooden stump was an old monk, his face a map of deep lines and his hands resting calmly in his lap. The monk was simply watching the way the fog drifted across the valley floor, his eyes steady and unblinking. The traveler stopped, his feet burning and his arms shaking from the weight of the iron box. He did not ask for a bed nor for food. He simply stood there, his chest heaving, his eyes darting toward the distant horizon, as if expecting some sudden calamity to arrive at any second. The monk looked at the man, then at the heavy box, and then back at the shifting mist. He did not stand up, and he did not greet the stranger. with formal words. He simply gestured toward the soft, flat patch of moss at his feet and said, just once, that the ground was steady enough to hold whatever one might be carrying. The traveller stared at the moss, his knuckles white against the dark, oxidized iron of the box. He felt a sudden, sharp fear that if he let go, even for a moment, the box might slide away into the abyss, or, worse, that the world would immediately demand an answer he was not prepared to give. He sat down, but he kept the box firmly on his lap. The monk watched. The man struggle with a gaze that held no judgment, only a deep, quiet attention. The sun began to dip behind the peaks, painting the clouds in shades of bruised purple and dying gold. The traveller kept checking the horizon, his neck muscles corded with tension, while the box dug into his weary legs. The monk reached over and poured a small cup of tea from a blackened kettle. He set the cup on a flat rock beside the traveller, but the man was so focused on the weight in his lap that he did not see it. He was busy planning what he would say. When he finally opened the lid, busy rehearsing the arguments he would have with his own worries once the contents were revealed. The monk sat in silence for a long time, listening to the traveller's ragged breathing. He did not offer advice. He did not tell the man to let go of his burden. He simply poured another small splash of tea, the liquid steaming in the cooling air. Finally, the monk spoke in a voice that sounded like the dry rustling of autumn leaves. He asked the traveller if he knew why the mountains never fell, despite the constant weight of the snow and the storms that tore at their peaks. The traveller blinked, his mind struggling to focus on anything other than the metal digging into his thighs. He shook his head, his face tight with the effort of holding on. The monk looked out at the valley and whispered that the mountains were not strong because they resisted the gravity that pulled at them, but because they had learned to be the weight itself. They did not try to hold themselves up against the earth. They simply surrendered to it. The traveller looked down at his own hands. They were trembling, the skin raw where the cold iron had rubbed against his palms. He realized he had not felt the texture of the moss, or the warmth of the tea, or the stillness of the twilight, because he was too busy being the one who held the heavy box. He felt the weight as an extension of his own bones. He began to wonder, for the first time in his life, if the box was actually a tool for his future, or if it was merely a tether that kept him from ever arriving at a place of rest. He looked at the monk, who was sitting so lightly on the earth that he seemed to be part of the mountain itself. The traveller wanted to ask what was in the box. He wanted to ask if it was worth the years of pain, the nights without sleep, and the constant gnawing anxiety that he was one step away from failure, but the words died in his throat. He understood, with a sudden quiet clarity, that if he asked, he would have to admit he was the one who had chosen to carry it. He sat in the dusk, the shadows lengthening around them, and he finally let his shoulders drop just an inch. It was a tiny movement, a microscopic surrender, but it felt like a mountain shifting. He noticed the cup of tea again, and for the first time, he smelled the earthy, bitter scent of the leaves. The monk said nothing more. He simply leaned back, his eyes closing, appearing to drift into a state of awareness that was not quite sleep and not quite waking. The traveller watched him. He felt the cold air biting at his ears and the heavy metallic pressure against his stomach. He was not yet ready to place the box on the ground, but he was no longer certain that he had to be the one who squeezed it so tightly. He sat there, a man caught between the habit of control and the quiet, beckoning possibility of rest. The stars began to appear in the darkening sky, vast and cold and entirely indifferent to his burden. And in that vastness, he felt his own smallness for the very first time. That traveller was not a foolish man, and perhaps you recognize that his heavy iron box is not so different from the burdens you carry through your own days. He was not trying to be difficult, and he was not trying to make his life harder. He was simply trying to survive the uncertainty of the mountain path by gathering everything he thought he might need to solve whatever problems the future might throw his way. You know this feeling. It is the weight you carry when you mentally rehearse a conversation 10 times before it happens, or when you replay a small, forgotten mistake from years ago, hoping that if you analyze it enough, you can finally fix the outcome. It is the belief that if you just grip your worries tightly enough, you will prevent them from becoming reality. But look at what happened to him at the mountain hut. The burden he carried was meant to be his protection, but it became the very thing that prevented him from ever feeling the warmth of the tea, the stability of the moss beneath his feet, or the simple grace of the twilight. This is the central insight that Buddhist wisdom offers to a tired heart. Suffering is not just the difficulty that happens to us. It is the additional layer of struggle we create when we try to force control over things that are already in motion. That heavy iron box was not just an object. It was his resistance to the reality of the mountain. It was his refusal to trust that he could handle the path as it appeared, moment by moment, without needing to pre-pack the answers in a rusted shell. You might wonder if letting go of your own worries means you are giving up, or becoming uncaring, or inviting disaster. But notice that the monk in the story did not ask the man to throw his box off the cliff. He did not lecture him on the uselessness of his gear. He simply invited him to notice the weight. He invited him to feel the difference between the actual path and the heavy, metallic, imagined solution the traveller was clutching. The suffering you feel right now is likely not caused by the events of your life, but by the way your mind keeps adding a second layer of judgment, planning, and rigid expectation on top of those events. You are adding a second arrow to the first, and then wondering why your spirit feels so exhausted. The Buddha often pointed out that we have very little control over the weather of our lives, but we have immense capacity to change how we stand in the rain. When we try to control the outcome, we are essentially trying to stop the mountain from being a mountain. We are trying to stop the fog from drifting or the sun from setting, all because we fear that we are not prepared to meet the night. But the lesson of the traveller suggests that you are already equipped to walk your path. You do not need to carry a box of iron answers to be safe. You only need to be present enough to feel the ground beneath your feet when you take each step. This is not a cold philosophy, and it does not ask you to stop caring about your life or the people you love. It asks you to stop turning your care into a cage. When you hold your life with an open palm rather than a clenched fist, you are not losing your grip. You are simply noticing that you are already holding yourself up. The tension you feel in your jaw or your chest is the physical signal of this unnecessary struggle. It is the sound of you trying to carry the future before it has even arrived. The Buddhist path is a gentle invitation to set that burden down for a while, just to see what happens when you stop trying to manage the entire universe in your mind. Think about the way you approach your own evenings. You might come to this time of rest with a mind full of tasks, worries, or self-reproach. convinced that if you solve these things, you will finally deserve peace. But peace is not a reward you earn after you have successfully balanced your mental ledger. Peace is the natural state that remains when you stop adding the extra weight of your own resistance. You do not need to be a perfect person, or a person with no problems, or a person who has mastered the art of surrender to finally rest. You only need to be a person who realizes that the box you are holding is, in fact, optional. The traveler was so afraid that the box contained the only solution to his existence that he could not see the tea master sitting right beside him, already offering him rest. How many times have you missed the kindness of the present moment because you were so busy being the gatekeeper of your own anxiety? You are not broken because you have struggled with this. You are simply human, trying to navigate a path that sometimes feels steep and unpredictable. Your desire to be safe is a beautiful impulse, but it has been misdirected into this habit of gripping. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to admit that the bag is heavy. You are allowed to want to set it down without needing a grand plan for what comes next. This is the meaning of the middle way, a concept that often gets misunderstood as a path of moderation, but is actually a path of awareness. It is the ability to walk the mountain without needing to be the mountain, and without needing to pretend the mountain is not there. You can feel the weight of your life, the responsibilities, and the uncertainties, without letting them dictate the way you breathe or the way you carry your own heart. When you stop treating your thoughts as if they are the truth of the world, they begin to lose their power to command your nervous system. A thought is just a visitor. An emotion is just a sensation. They do not have to be the heavy iron box you drag with you everywhere you go. The monk's wisdom was not in the words he spoke, but in the environment he created. He sat in silence, and he allowed the traveler to exist in that space without needing to explain himself. You deserve that same space tonight. You do not need to explain your worries to the air. You do not need to justify why you feel heavy. You can simply be in this room, in this moment, listening to the sound of these words and letting the reality of your own body begin to settle. The path ahead is not going anywhere, and you do not need to be the one who clears it of all obstacles tonight. The earth is strong enough to hold you while you sleep, and the dawn will arrive whether you spend your night worrying or resting. In a few moments, we will explore a way to practice this letting go that feels as natural as exhaling. We will not be discarding your concerns or pretending that your life does not have challenges. We will simply be shifting the way you hold them. Imagine, just for a second, that the heavy box you have been carrying is slowly losing its weight. Not because the objects inside have changed, but because you have decided to stop squeezing the iron so hard. You can still care about your life. You can still plan your tomorrow. But you can do it from a place of lightness rather than a place of desperate, clawing control. This is the shift that changes everything. It is the difference between a life of constant defense and a life of unfolding presence. You have spent so much energy keeping your armor tight, and it is exhausting you. But the armor is not keeping the world out. It is keeping you from experiencing the world as it actually is, which is often much softer and much more forgiving than your mind believes. As we move deeper into this, let yourself be curious about the space you are currently occupying. Notice the temperature of the air, the way your lungs fill and empty, and the feeling of the surface beneath you. You are not floating in the dark. You are resting on the foundation of the present, and that is a much steadier place than any box of worries you could possibly carry. There is a profound freedom in realizing that you are not the one who determines the movement of the stars or the growth of the mountain trees. You are a part of that movement. When you align your own heart with that reality, you stop trying to be the director of a play that has no script. You become a participant, capable of joy and capable of endurance, without the need to be the architect of every single outcome. This is the promise of the journey we are on tonight. It is the realization that your own inner peace is not a fragile thing, that you must guard with iron hinges. It is the vast, quiet space that remains when you finally stop trying to hold the whole world in your arms. Now that the story of the traveler and his iron box has settled into the quiet space between your thoughts, we can move a little deeper into your own experience. You do not need to do anything with this information. You do not need to fix anything, change anything, or even understand it fully tonight. Just let these words be like the soft mountain air that moves through the trees, neither asking for nor expecting a reply. If it feels right, allow your body to sink a little further into the surface beneath you. Feel the places where you are holding yourself upright and see if you can offer those muscles permission to simply stop, if only for the duration of this slow, quiet breath. Think about the worries that have been crowding your mind. Today, you might feel them as a familiar weight in your chest, or a tightness in your stomach, or perhaps a restless, humming energy in your hands. Do not try to push these sensations away. That would only be another way of gripping. Instead, acknowledge them. Imagine that every concern you are carrying, every rehearsal of a future mistake, and every replay of a past regret is a small, heavy stone in your mind's eye. See these stones clearly. They are not beautiful, and they are not helping you, but they are yours. You have been carrying them for so long that they have become part of your landscape. Perhaps you can visualize a small, sturdy wooden box resting on the ground right beside you. It is a simple, humble thing, worn smooth by time, and its lid is open, waiting. When you feel a thought rise up, a thought that tells you that you must be in control, or that you must worry to be safe, see it as one of those stones. You can pick it up with your mind, feel its cold, jagged edges, and then gently, without any force or anger, place it into the wooden box. You are not throwing it away. You are not pretending it does not exist. You are simply setting it down. You are allowing the ground to take the weight that your shoulders have been straining to carry for so long. If another thought appears, maybe a fear about tomorrow, or a judgment about who you are, take another slow breath. Watch the thought as it forms. Notice the way it tries to grab your attention, and then place it alongside the others in the box. You might find that the box is actually quite large, much larger than you expected. It can hold everything you have been carrying. There is no need to count the stones, and there is no need to organize them. You are just practicing the art of setting them down. The purpose here is not to empty the box, but to free your own hands. Notice how your hands feel now, even if you are just imagining them opening. There is a strange, subtle lightness when the fingers unclench. It is as if they have been curled around a handle for years, and they are finally remembering what it is like to be soft. Do not worry if your thoughts rush back in. They will. That is just what thoughts do. When they do, treat them exactly the same way. See the stone, recognize the weight, and place it in the box. You are learning that you have a choice. You can be the one who carries the iron, or you can be the one who sits on the moss and watches the mist drift by. This is not a task you have to complete. It is a practice you can return to whenever the weight becomes too much. If you find yourself in the middle of a busy day, feeling that familiar, panicked need to control every outcome, you can pause for a single breath. You can visualize the box on the ground. You can place the heavy, urgent feeling inside, and you can let your shoulders drop just a little bit. That is enough. You do not have to be perfect at this. The fact that you are even noticing the weight is the most important part of the journey. It is the beginning of a different relationship with your own mind. You might feel a small, quiet resistance to this. The mind often believes that if we set the stones down, we will lose our protection. It tells us that the weight is the only thing keeping us grounded. But look at the mountain again. The mountain is grounded not by the weight it carries, but by the earth it rests upon. Your safety does not come from your vigilance, and it does not come from your ability to predict the future. Your safety comes from your inherent presence. You are here, breathing, and you are part of the vast, unfolding life that happens whether you manage it or not. If it feels right, rest your hand on your own heart. Feel the steady, rhythmic movement as your lungs fill and empty. You are not managing that, are you? You do not have to count your breaths to make sure they happen. You do not have to remind your heart to beat. The body already knows how to do its work. Without your constant supervision, your mind can learn that same trust. It can learn that it does not need to be the supervisor of every moment. You can allow your thoughts to move like clouds across the sky, and you can be the mountain that stays still beneath them, untroubled by their passing. Take another slow breath, deeper this time, and as you exhale, imagine the tension leaving your jaw, your forehead, and the back of your neck. There is no prize for being the most worried person in the room. There is no reward for suffering more than you need to. You have been carrying the weight of the mountain, but you were only ever meant to walk upon it. If you find your mind wandering back to the stones, do not judge yourself. That judgment is just one more stone, one more thing to set down. Just gently, without any fuss, move your attention back to the rhythm of your breath and the feeling of the surface supporting your body. You are safe enough to soften. Nothing is going to fall apart if you stop gripping for these few moments. The world is large, and it is capable of holding its own weight. It does not need you to hold it up. Tonight, you are allowed to be small. You are allowed to be quiet. You are allowed to be a person who is resting, rather than a person who is doing, fixing, or preparing. The box is there, the stones are accounted for, and your hands are free. Stay with this sensation of lightness for a moment. Feel what it is like to simply exist without the need to manage the universe. This is the place where healing begins, in the quiet, empty space between your thoughts, where you are finally allowed to be who you are without the burden of who you think you must become in a different valley. Far from the mountain tea hut, there lived a woman whose life was defined by the intricate beauty of her loom. She was a master weaver, known across the province for creating tapestries so detailed that they seemed to hold the breath of the seasons within their threads. She loved her work with a fierce, possessive devotion. When she wove, she did not merely pass the shuttle. Back and forth, she counted every rotation, monitored the tension of every warp thread, and watched for the slightest imperfection with an eagle-eyed vigilance that kept her awake long into the night. Her hands were always moving, always adjusting, always correcting. She believed that the quality of her life was measured by the flawlessness of her cloth. One autumn, she began a new tapestry, a complex scene of a hillside garden at the moment of dusk. The colors were difficult to blend, and the pattern demanded a level of precision that strained her eyes. One evening, after weeks of relentless focus, she looked down and saw a single, deep blue thread that had snagged, pulling a whole section of the pattern slightly out of alignment. It was a tiny mistake, almost invisible to any other eye, but to her, it was a catastrophe. It felt like the undoing of everything she had worked toward. The sight of that frayed thread ignited a familiar, hot panic in her chest. She grabbed her shears, intent on cutting the entire section out, determined to unpick the weeks of labor so she could start over and make it perfect. Just as she was about to sever the thread, she heard a soft rhythmic sound coming from the monastery courtyard outside her window. It was the sound of an elderly monk sweeping the stone path, his broom making a long, steady, shush-shush sound against the flagstones. He moved with a grace that seemed entirely unhurried, his focus not on the cleanliness of the path itself, but on the simple, continuous act of clearing. She watched him. For a long moment, the shears poised in her hand, her heart racing with the need to rectify her error. He looked up, his eyes meeting hers through the window, and he gave a slight, knowing nod. He did not ask what was wrong. He simply gestured toward the fallen leaves he was gathering, and he walked toward her door. He entered her workshop quietly, the scent of wood smoke and damp earth clinging to his robes. He stood beside her loom, watching the way she stared at the snagged thread with such intense, painful rejection. He did not reach for the cloth, and he did not touch the shears. He simply asked her if she thought the sunset in the valley would stop occurring if the colors in her tapestry were not perfectly aligned. She blinked. Surprised by the question, she told him that a mistake in the weave was a failure, and that a failure was something she could not allow to stand. The weaver's voice was thin, brittle, with the exhaustion of someone who had been holding her own life together with sheer willpower. The monk picked up a small, smooth wooden shuttle that had fallen to the floor. He turned it over in his hands, feeling its weight, and then he placed it back into her palm. He told her a story of a great storm that had once swept through the mountain, years before, felling trees and shifting the path to the monastery. He said that for weeks, the path had been chaotic, filled with debris and uncertainty, and he had spent his days trying to clear every branch and every stone so it would look exactly as it had before. He thought that if he could just force the mountain to return to its original state, he would be safe again. He grew thinner and weaker, his hands bleeding from the branches, his spirit heavy with the weight of the mountain's own history. Then, one morning, he had simply stopped. He had looked at the mess of the path and realized that the mountain was not broken. It was just changing. He realized that the effort of trying to force the world to remain the same was causing him more pain than the storm ever had. He stopped trying to clear the path, and instead, he started walking on it as it was. He found that the new path was just as firm as the old one, and the view from the new route was different, but it was just as beautiful. He looked at the weaver and asked her if she was weaving the cloth, or if the cloth was weaving her. The weaver looked down at the frayed thread. She felt the heavy, rigid urge to cut, to fix, to control. But she also felt the weight of the years she had spent in that chair, tethered to the loom by her own impossible standards. She looked at her hands. They were stiff, the joints aching from years of gripping. She realized that she had been treating her own life like a tapestry that could not afford a single mistake. She had been living in a constant state of defense, afraid that if she stopped weaving for a moment, or if she allowed a flaw to remain, her entire world would unravel. She did not cut the thread. It was the hardest thing she had ever done. Instead, she took a long, slow breath, a breath that felt like it reached all the way down to her tired feet. She let her shoulders drop, letting the tension fall away from her neck. She picked up a thin needle, not to destroy the pattern, but to gently tuck the loose end of the blue thread back into the weave, leaving it slightly visible. It was still a flaw, and it was still there, but it was no longer a catastrophe. It was just a part of the pattern, a small textured reminder of the moment she had decided to stop fighting her own work. The monk smiled, an expression that seemed to crinkle the very air in the room. He did not tell her she was enlightened, and he did not promise her that she would never feel the urge to be perfect again. He simply nodded and turned back to his broom. The weaver sat at her loom, the twilight deepening around her. She did not finish the tapestry. That night, she left the loom as it was, with the floor intact, and she stood up to walk into the courtyard. She felt the cool air on her face, and for the first time, she noticed the scent of the night-blooming jasmine that grew along the monastery wall. She had not become a different person, but she had become a different kind of weaver. She had learned the subtle, profound art of leaving things as they were, rather than constantly trying to overwrite reality with her own demands. She still loved her craft, and she still valued beauty. But the frantic, desperate energy had drained out of her hands. She felt lighter, and she felt capable of looking at the sunset without feeling the need to catch it, measure it, or force it to fit into her frame. She walked across the courtyard, her footsteps quiet on the flagstones, and she felt the heavy iron of her old anxiety begin to rust and crumble away. She knew that there would be more frayed threads in the future, and she knew there would be moments where she would want to grab the shears again. But she also knew, now, that she had a choice. She could weave, or she could unpick, but she did not have to be the one who decided whether the world was whole. She under a vast person in a garden, darkening sky, and that, she realized, was finally enough. The weight you carry is not made of the events themselves. It is made of the iron stones you have gathered, one by one, because you were afraid of the dark. When life brings us a moment of sorrow, or a day of overwhelming uncertainty, that is the first reality. It is the rain falling. It is the wind blowing. But the suffering that keeps you awake, the exhaustion that settles into your marrow, is not the rain. It is the elaborate, frantic work of trying to stop the rain with your own bare hands. You imagine that if you could just hold the correct posture, or worry with enough precision, or judge yourself with enough severity, you might somehow prevent the storm from reaching the ground. This is the great deception of the anxious heart. It believes that control is a wall, standing between you and the inevitable shifts of your life. But when you are standing there, pressing your palms against the air, you are not protecting yourself from the storm. You are only exhausting your own body. The stone in your hand, the one you have been clutching for hours, is not a shield, it is a burden. And the saddest part of the practice is that you picked it up, thinking it was a weapon for your defense. You thought that if you were prepared for the worst could not touch you. But the storm moved through the mountain regardless of your preparations. Consider how the mind works when it encounters a memory of a mistake. The mistake happened once, in the past. That is the first occurrence. It had a beginning and an ending, but your mind, in its desire to remain in control, refuses to let the event finish. It drags the memory into the present, polishes it, inspects it, and turns it over, looking for a way to rewrite the outcome. It says, if only I had spoken differently, if only I had been sharper, if only I had seen the warning. This is the second arrow. This is where the ironstone grows heavier. You are not suffering from the mistake. You are suffering from the refusal to allow the mistake to have ended. When you judge yourself, you are trying to be both the judge and the person on trial. You are splitting your own spirit into two parts, creating a conflict where there should be only a single, breathing human being. You think that, if you are harsh enough with your own heart, you will force yourself to become better, safer, or more successful. But shame is not a teacher. It is a drain. It takes the energy you need to navigate your life and pours it into a bottomless pit of self-correction. You are using the very light you need to walk the path, to examine your own feet for imaginary flaws. This tendency to hold on to pain is often rooted in the fear of uncertainty. We believe that if we can identify every potential danger, we will be safe. So we scan the horizon. We replay the past. We rehearse the future. We live in a constant state of simulated defense, waiting for a blow that may never come. But while you are waiting for that blow, you are missing the ground. You are actually walking on. You are missing the smell of the pine needles in the mist, the sound of the wind in the trees, and the simple, steady reality that you are still here. You are surviving the storm, and you are surviving the silence that follows. Buddhist wisdom suggests that we do not need to remove the mountain to find peace. We do not need to smooth every rock on the path. We only need to stop trying to carry the mountain in our own arms. When you feel that tightness, that urge to fix everything, pause and ask yourself if you are responding to reality or to your own resistance. Are you looking at the path, or are you looking at the box of iron you have been dragging? If you are looking at the box, you are not in the present. You are in a past that has already ended, or a future that has not yet begun. This does not mean that your life is easy. It does not mean that you should stop wanting to be kind, or stop wanting to improve, or stop caring about your work. It means that you can hold these values without the desperation of a drowning person. You can weave your tapestry with care, but you do not need to be the person who dictates whether the world approves of the pattern. You can walk the mountain, but you do not need to be the one who ensures the clouds behave. You can release the need to be the architect of your own existence, because the existence is already holding you. When you stop trying to control the uncontrollable, you do not become a passive observer. You become a participant who is finally capable of seeing. You see the frayed thread, and instead of a panic-stricken desire to cut the entire cloth, you see a small, textured detail that you can attend to with a gentle hand. You see the worry, and instead of a stone to be gripped, you see a signal that you are tired and in need of rest. You see the past, and instead of a weapon to strike yourself with, you see a collection of experiences that have brought you to this very moment of awareness. The transformation is not in the events of your life changing. The transformation is in the quality of your presence. You stop being a person who is constantly at war with their own experience. You start being a person who can acknowledge the weight of the world, acknowledge the weight of their own heart, and then decide in any given moment to set the iron stones down on the grass. You are not abandoning your life. You are finally, after so many years of labor, choosing to live it. Observe how the tension in your body feels when you let go of the idea that you must solve your existence before you sleep. It feels like a long, slow sigh. It feels like the moment when a bird finally stops fighting the wind and begins to glide. You have been fighting the current for a long time. You have been trying to swim upstream because you thought that was the only way to reach safety. But the current is where you are. The river is the path, and when you stop thrashing, you realize that you were always capable of floating. The water is deep, and it is capable of supporting you even when you are not trying to navigate every ripple. Do not worry if this feels foreign. It is meant to feel different. You have spent a lifetime building your habits, and they will not vanish in a single evening. When you wake tomorrow, you will likely feel the old urge to grip the iron. You will feel the temptation to rehearse your tasks and replay your errors. That is not a failure. That is just the old path of your mind. But notice it. Notice the tightening in your chest. Notice the way your hands clench the air. And then remember the tea hut and the weaver and the moss and the simple, quiet permission to let the stones fall where they belong. You are not the keeper of the iron. You are the one who is walking the path. And the path is wide, and it is kind, and it is ready for you to rest. As you prepare to let these thoughts drift away, know that you are not losing your grip on your life. You are simply letting go of the fiction that you have to hold it together all by yourself. The universe has been holding you all along. The stars have been keeping their places, and the moon has been rising without your help, and the ground has been waiting patiently for you to finally put your heavy pack down. This practice does not exist only in the quiet of a mountain tea hut or the stillness of a weaver's workshop. It is meant for the kitchen light at midnight, the glow of your phone screen, and the crowded transit of your workday. You might be sitting there, feeling the familiar hum of anxiety as you wait for a text message that signifies approval. Or perhaps you are lying in bed, your mind running through a list of what you failed to finish today. When that tight, familiar need to be in control rises up, see it for what it is. It is the urge to reach for a stone, to fill your hands with the heavy, cold iron of worry, because you are afraid of being empty-handed in the face of uncertainty. You do not need to discard your responsibilities, and you do not need to stop caring about your life. But notice what happens when you catch yourself checking your phone for reassurance. For the 5th time in an hour, you are not checking for information. You are checking to see if the weight you are carrying is still there, or if the world has shifted in a way you did not authorize. In that pause, before your thumb hits the screen, you can choose to set the stone down. You can breathe, feel your feet on the floor, and realize that even without the confirmation you were seeking, the room is still steady, and you are still breathing. When you feel that familiar pang of comparison, looking at the lives of others, and feeling as though your own tapestry is frayed and uneven, recognize the instinct to reach for your shears, that urge to edit yourself, to trim away your own vulnerabilities, so you can present a version of yourself that seems perfect, is a way of holding the iron box. It is an exhausting way to exist. You are not a tapestry that needs to be perfect to be worthy. You are the weaver, and the beauty of your life is found in the texture of the threads you have lived. When you feel the sting of shame or the pressure to be more than you are, allow yourself to pause. You are allowed to be a work in progress. You are allowed to leave the frayed threads as they are. There are moments in the day when the weight becomes almost unbearable. Maybe you are at your desk or in a meeting or driving through the city, and you feel the sudden, overwhelming desire to solve every problem at once. You feel the need to rehearse what you will say to someone or to play back a conversation from 3 years ago. Your mind is like a bird that has forgotten how to land. It is flying in circles, burning its energy to keep the sky from falling. In those moments, you do not need to fix the bird. You only need to notice the branch. Find the sensation of your body in the chair or the feeling of your hands on the steering wheel, and let your focus drop from the mental theater of your worries into the physical reality of the present. The guilt of resting is one of the heaviest stones you carry. You might find yourself sitting on the couch after a long day, but your mind is busy calculating what you should have done better or what you need to do first thing tomorrow. You are physically resting, but your hands are still clenched around the imaginary box of tasks. You are not truly resting because you believe you have not earned it, but you do not earn your right to exist, and you do not earn your right to be still. The mountain does not have to justify its stillness to the valley. You are part of the world, and you are entitled to the same permission to be quiet as the trees and the stars. When you feel the need to smile and pretend that you are perfectly fine, even when you feel the heavy iron of exhaustion in your bones, you are adding another layer of armor to your burden. It is okay to admit that you are tired. It is okay to let the mask soften, even if only in the privacy of your own heart. You do not need to be the person who holds the world up for everyone else. Sometimes, the most compassionate thing you can do for the people you love is to stop carrying their potential weights for them, and instead show them what it looks like to be human and at peace with your own fallibility. Every time you choose to sit with uncertainty rather than rushing to cover it with a plan, you are practicing the art of the open palm. When you are waiting for news or sitting with a problem that has no immediate solution, notice the physical sensation of the weight. Does your chest tighten? Do you hold your breath? These are the moments where the ironstones appear. You are trying to fill the silence of the unknown with the noise of your own control. Practice simply noticing the silence. It is not empty, it is spacious, and within that space, there is room for you to exist without needing to explain, justify, or solve. You will forget this, of course. You will find yourself back in the habit of gripping, your hands white and aching, your mind racing through the dark. Do not be hard on yourself when this happens. That judgment is just one more stone, one more thing to place in the wooden box and set aside. The practice is not about never picking up a stone again. It is about how quickly you notice that you are holding one and how gently you are willing to let it go. You are learning a new way of walking through your life, one where you trust that your own heart is resilient enough to handle what comes, even without the heavy, rusted shield of your anxiety. Think of your life as a series of small unfolding scenes. You do not have to be the director. You are the one who is witnessing the play. When you realize that the scenes will happen, whether you are tense or relaxed, you are gifted the opportunity to choose your experience. You can experience the rush of the workday with a clenched jaw, or you can experience it with a breath of perspective. You can experience the night with a mind full of replays, or you can experience it as the quiet, dark space you were given for the specific purpose of forgetting the day. The modern world is designed to make you feel as though you are never doing enough, never being enough, and never safe enough. It is designed to keep you reaching for stones. When you feel that pull, turn it into a reminder. Use the feeling of pressure as a trigger to remember the tea hut and the weaver. Use it as a signal that it is time to set the bag down. You are building a sanctuary within yourself that the noise of the world cannot penetrate unless you choose to invite it in. Tonight, you are closing the gate to that sanctuary. You are turning the lock, not to keep the world out, but to give yourself the quiet, empty space you need to remember who you are when you are not working, not planning, and not trying to hold the stars in your hands. The weight of the iron box is no longer pressing against your ribs, and the tension that once held your shoulders in a state of eternal defense has begun to dissolve. You are not losing your grip on your life. You are simply letting go of the iron that was cutting into your skin. Imagine your hands now, lying open and relaxed against the fabric beneath you. They have held the burden for so many miles, through so many long, uncertain nights, but they are finally empty. There is a strange, quiet comfort in this emptiness, a sense of space that was not there before. Feel the air moving against your palms, cool and light, a reminder that you do not need to be the one who carries the burden of the world to be a part of it. Dock. The mountain continues its slow, ancient breath, undisturbed by the travelers who cross its ridges. You are like the mountain now. You are solid and grounded, and you are no longer trying to change the weather. The fog of your worries may still swirl around your peak, and the winds of your responsibilities may still howl against your sides. But you are not the fog, and you are not the wind. You are the stillness that remains beneath it all. You can feel the weight of your own body settling into the earth, and you can trust that the earth is strong enough to hold you. You do not have to provide the strength. You do not have to provide the solution. You only have to provide the presence, and that is a gift you have already been given. Let your breathing become as slow and rhythmic as the movement of the tides, pulling in, pushing out, each cycle clearing a little more space in your mind. The stones you gathered today, the ones you placed in your wooden box, are resting in the grass beside you. They are not going anywhere, and they do not need to be sorted, counted, or carried into your dreams. You are finished with them for tonight. You have walked far enough. You have climbed enough, and you have managed enough. The path ahead will be there when the sun rises, and you will meet it then with a lighter stride and a heart that remembers how to open. Notice the darkness of the room. It is not an empty, hollow dark. It is a soft, deep silence that is here to hold you. It is a kind of dark that invites the eyes to stop searching, the ears to stop straining, and the mind to stop predicting. Imagine that this darkness is like the water in a quiet mountain pool, reflecting the stars above. It is calm, and it is deep, and it does not ask anything of you. You can sink into it, letting your thoughts drift like fallen leaves on the surface, moving wherever the current takes them, without you needing to guide their course. You have lived a long day, and you have carried more than your share of the weight. But the weaver in the courtyard has left her loom, and the tea master in the hut has extinguished his lamp, and the traveller has finally found a place to rest his feet. You are joining them in this, the most ancient and natural of all human practices. You are letting the world spin on its own axis for a little while, trusting that it does not require your constant, anxious supervision. You are allowed to be small. You are allowed to be quiet. You are allowed to be the part of the forest that simply grows, the part of the mountain that simply stands, and the part of the river that simply flows. The iron is gone, and the box is closed, and your hands are finally warm. There is no urgency left in your body, no ticking clock in your mind, no unfinished errand in your spirit. The stillness is wrapping around you, a blanket of quiet that grows heavier and deeper with every breath. You are drifting away from the shore of your concerns, leaving the land of shoulds and musts behind, moving out into the calm, open water of the present. You are safe. You are held. You are exactly where you need to be, and you have nothing at all to do. Allow your eyes to remain closed, feeling the weight of your eyelids, the softness of your face, and the slow, steady hum of your own resting heartbeat. The world is vast, and you are a part of its immense, quiet rhythm, rising and falling, beginning and ending, all in the perfect, silent order of the night. Every cell in your body knows how to rest, and every layer of your mind is beginning to release the tension it has held for so long. You are not forgetting who you are. You are remembering what it feels like to be without the heavy iron. You are returning to the source of your own quiet, where everything is already enough and nothing needs to be changed. The stars are turning above the mountain, indifferent to the chaos of the day, and they are watching over your sleep with the same stillness that dwells within your own heart. You can feel the peace, not as a destination you have reached, but as the ground you are lying on. It has been there the entire time, waiting for you to notice that you are no longer carrying the burden, waiting for you to realize that the mountain does not fall when you stop trying to hold it up. You are drifting now, further and further into the cool, dark water of the night, where no thoughts can follow and no stones can reach you. You are moving into a sleep that is deep and natural and entirely your own. Your mind is like a clear mountain stream, and the water is running cold and clean, washing away the traces of the day. You are not fighting the current. You are resting on the bed of the stream, and the water is moving over you, cool and gentle, bringing you the gift of a total, unburdened stillness. You are leaving the iron behind, and you are leaving the box behind, and you are moving into a place where you are finally, truly, and completely at home with yourself. The night is deep, and the world is still, and you are here, exactly where you are meant to be. If the path forward is covered in mist, and if you cannot see the summit, does it matter? And if the peace you have been searching for was never something you had to carry, but something you only had to release?